Well, hello, and a very warm welcome back to the Andrew Eborn Show. Well, actually, it's the A&E, the Andrew and Errol Show. We've renamed it because it's back down to South Africa with my new best mate, Errol. How are we doing, Errol?
Oh, I'm okay. Been a number of, ongoing interviews following the election, and, lose track of everything, to be honest. But anyway,
Well, you're on more platforms than Paddington, like me. I love it.
yeah, I have more platforms than Paddington. Yeah,
No,
yeah,
great stuff. Well, one of the things that I love about people in the public eye is when they speak about their own challenges. We talk about, if you prick me, do I not bleed? If you tickle me, do I not laugh? A great Shakespearean quote. And you've previously spoken about some of the challenges that people face, like divorce, and how you've helped people going through that situation. Elon himself has spoken about his own challenges with Asperger's and autism. And he very publicly did that on Saturday Night Live on the 9th of May 2021. When did you first notice that Elon was slightly different?
Well, as a child, as a child, he, was, you know, would often stare into space, and we had that situation. I think I talked on a show of yours where the teachers at the school he was at when he was in grade two called me, the headmaster called me to say that I need to see him. At that time, I was concerned that Elon was pretty vociferous. People would say to him, surely, he's not reading that science magazine or something like that, or whatever he had in his hand. And he was, and then he'd say, "What are you, stupid?" Or you'd say to the adult, this wasn't taken too well. And I remember on one occasion he was sitting with it. The kids were all playing in this rather nice sort of garden at this house, and the adults were sitting outside around a Saturday afternoon, I think it was, sitting around, talking and drinks and talking about, I think at that time, about the economy in South Africa and how things were not looking so good and all that sort of stuff because of the pressures on apartheid and so on. And Elon was sitting with us, and one of the adults turned to him and said, "Hey, why don't you go and join the kids?" He said, "No, I'd rather sit here and listen to you, to what you're all saying." So he said, so this guy sort of, I don't forget what he said, but he said, "No, no, off with you," or something like that. And said, then Elon said to him, "Look, stupid, I'm staying here, you know." So that was pretty heavy, And I just said to him afterwards, "Look, it wasn't taken too well by these adults. This was South Africa, that on that basis, I should have taken him, given him a thrashing, But I said to him afterwards, you can't say that. You can't say that." He was very small. I wouldn't imagine more than five or six or something, And I said to him, "You can't say things like that to people." Maybe seven, I don't know. And he said, "Yeah, but the guy's stupid." I said, yes, he was stupid. But you can't say that because they can't take it, they can't take it. And, so that was his thing. So I was called once to the school, and they told me when I went in, the headmaster said in the headmaster's office, very august scene in that time, Elon is retarded, they told me. So I said, "Oh." So I said, I knew he wasn't retarded. So the teacher, the lady teacher was sitting there wringing her hands, and saying, "Oh." And I said, "Well, what's the problem?" And they said, she said, "Well, he stares out into space all the time. He sort of stares out the window all the time. And he doesn't listen to her. And she can't even reach him. She'll call him several times in the class. And then eventually she said maybe the day before or something, went up to him and right next to him, he wasn't listening to her. And then she pushed him on the shoulder and then he spun around, and sort of came out of this sort of thing. And she said, "Why aren't you listening to me?" Or I think, and then he said, the trees are going green, eh? And, it was like spring coming. And she said, this is what he said to her. And I said, "Well, it is, spring." I mean, he did notice that. I think that's pretty cool. And anyway, cut a long story short, it was a very awkward meeting, but they said he has to go to a special school. So I said, maybe, or the headmaster said, maybe he can't hear properly. So we jumped on that, I jumped on that. "Oh, yes, I think that's what it is." So I said, "I'll take him for a hearing test tomorrow, the next day." And I did. There was nothing wrong with his hearing. So I moved him to another school and to a sort of better sort of private school. There weren't any problems after that.
Yeah.
But what we're talking about is autism. So
Yeah.
yes, so he is like that. A lot of the time now, people say to me, I've many interviews, and they ask me, how is Elon taking all this criticism that he gets? All these, unbelievable, stupid, wild criticism from these loonies, on the so-called left, and I say, well, Elon doesn't really let anything that doesn't appeal to him, doesn't let it sink in. He sort of bounces off him, just bounces right off him, and so that's really helpful because he's not somebody who's got, oh my God, somebody said this and this about me. I've got to go and fix it. I've got to go and sort it out. Oh no, he's not like that at all. Yeah. You might say to him, I'm sorry I said this to you yesterday. You might say, you said that to me? And then you say, oh no, I think it was to somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly one of the good traits, and people have got a greater understanding now of autism. I mean, some of the greatest minds in history were supposed to be autistic or somewhere on the spectrum. Einstein, Bill Gates, Isaac Newton, Charles Darwin, Nikola Tesla, and Mozart, even the person on the back of our £50 note here. Do you know who's on the back of our £50 note?
Is that Joan Crawford?
That's the front. That's so much in the green. Now, on the back, we have Alan Turing. Yes, Alan Turing. Yeah, who is brilliant. He cracked the Enigma code.
Yes, we owe him a lot. But he not only cracked the Enigma code, he built the first computers in the United States that today led, the brain, or what is the Brainiac or something? Yes. Not only the Turing code, but I mean, not only the what was it, Ultra code or something like that?
That's right, yeah.
He also built the first genuine computer in the 50s.
Which was extraordinary, a huge thing they had at Bletchley Park, where, Elon came along to that. We had our first AI security summit, and Elon came along at Bletchley Park. But Alan Turing, and at the time, he was ridiculed. He was all sorts of things. He was condemned, but his differently wired brain basically helped solve that sort of stuff. But Elon's been very, very open. He's used his great sense of humor. We've talked about that sense of humor beforehand, coming from Monty Python, the great British comedies. And he's a big fan of Saturday Night Live. This is where he came out, the first host, he said, or the first host to admit it, that he was on the spectrum. And he was talking about his own, that doesn't have a lot of intonation or variation. Did you think I was going to be a chill, normal dude sending people off to Mars? What did you make of that Saturday Night Live appearance?
Well, it's a long time ago. I thought he was, I thought it doesn't suit him, that kind of thing, He was trying to be funny, but I'm critical. He's my son, so I say, he's not a fool. He'd been far more his time would have been more well used on the Saturday Night Live, at any rate, in a different way. But dressing him up with costumes and stuff, I thought, this is banal. But Saturday Night Live has lost its appeal. It was really good with Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase and those guys many years ago. Today, I don't know what they're trying to do, but you have to. I find they make fun of people, which I think it's not fair. That can't answer back for their being made fun of.
Yeah, and I think you make an interesting one. It used to be sort of great music. I did a deal with 25 years of Saturday Night Live, the fantastic music artists that they had on there in addition to the comedy. But Elon's appearance was on back in May the 9th, 2021. He also had his mother on there as well. How do you think Maye came across?
I don't recall seeing her on it, but I imagine she's not really a funny person. So, I can't imagine her making jokes on that. No, I think I do remember that it was good publicity for him, but at the end of the day, making a fool of himself is not a really good way to go. No, I would never have done something like that. I'll try and be funny or go on that show, but I wouldn't have them dress me up as some sort of Mexican weirdo or something like that. I seem to recall. No, it's not funny. In fact, I don't recall seeing a funny. I'm sorry to be such a sour about this, but I don't recall seeing a good Saturday Night Live show in years at all. I simply don't. Nobody follows it anymore.
Yeah, well, it is interesting because it has changed a lot, and it's gone from that sort of controversy. Like one of the revelations, which Maye says, is that they discussed it was when Elon was 12, he created his own video game called Blast Star, and he was paid $500 for it. But Maye had to open the bank account.
No, that's not.
Do you remember that?
Totally false. That's not true. Okay, so Elon, when he was 11, persuaded me to buy him a computer. This followed him actually wanting to join a computer course with adults, and which they refused to have him on a course because he was only 11. But when I got him into the course, which was run by people from England at Wits University in South Africa, I got him into the course through sort of more or less begging on my knees because Elon wouldn't let it go. And I'll tell you what the course cost. It cost £750 in 1982.
Wow.
So it was very, very expensive if you look back, you know. And anyway, so I got him onto this course. And when he was on this course, the deal with them was that he'd sit on the side and not say anything. After the very first lecture, he didn't come out. It was a 2-hour-long lecture. He didn't come out. And Kimball and I were sitting in the car outside. We'd actually gone for a meal while he was in there at Wits. And I used to go to Wits, so I knew exactly where he was. And so I went in and found him in the lecture hall at the bottom with his jacket off and his sleeves rolled up and his long grey pants. He was only 11, and he was talking with all these guys, you know, with these tall guys with these glasses, grim glasses and beards, and you know, and as I walked up to them, this one guy who was from England, he said to me, without even introducing himself to me, he said, "This boy has to get one of these new computers, or one of these computers." It was a new IBM XT8, the first PC ever made. And I said, "Oh," well, my first thought was, "How much is it?" You know, and then the head of Hyperama, which is a guy also from England, which is a big sort of hypermarket shopping center that they brought out here, and I worked on those. He said to me, I knew the guy, and he said the CEO, and he said, "Errol, don't worry, it's very expensive. We'll give you a discount." But at any rate, it was 7,800 rands, which was about £400 at the time. But I mean, it was the same. A new Mercedes Benz cost 9,000 rands.
Right.
A new one, 220. Mercedes Benz 220 was 9,000 rands. This thing was 7,800 rands. I got a slight discount, I think, of about 400 rands. But anyway, I bought him this thing, and he then promptly taught himself how, I don't know, but he taught himself to code, to program. You know, he just went onto it like mad, you know, and he was on this thing all the time. And then one day he showed me a program that he'd made, and it's a program. He loved games, you know, video games, and the earliest video games were like ping pong paddles, you know, that worked and stuff. And then he showed me this game where, using the keys on the up and down and left and right keys on the keypad, you had this sort of little thing that was coming down, and you could move your gun back and forward, and then you could try and shoot it. And if you didn't shoot it and it got past you, and then you lose, you see. And so I said, "Well, wow, that's amazing." Maye knew absolutely nothing about this. So then I thought, this is pretty extraordinary. So I asked him to type the program out, which he did, and then I sent it to PC Magazine. And I said to him, you know, they should have a look at this. So PC Magazine came back to me immediately and said they want to publish this. So I said, all right. So they published it for, I imagine the equivalent in today's money, I'd say £500 or something in today's money. £500. It was not a little, it was a reasonable amount of money for that. I mean, so, yeah, so it's fine. So they sent me the money. And I kept the page in PC Magazine. I kept that page for many, many years. Over the next 40 years, I kept that page, and among my stuff. And then about 4 or 5 years ago or so, I thought, you know, Elon having now done so well, I will send this to him and remind him of it. So I sent it to him, and he then somehow gave it to other people, and then wound up on the news, as part of the news cycle, that this is something he had done. If I hadn't kept that, nobody would know about it.
Right.
I kept it, the page out of PC Magazine, torn and tattered, but there it was. And I sent it to him.
Oh, brilliant.
I mean,
And do you think, I mean, this is what they say, that the mind is incredible because it compensates, doesn't it? And all this wonderful creativity, all this wonderful looking at the world in a different light. Do you think the Asperger's and the autism helped with all of that?
Well, I mean, I'm also a person that people say that when they talk to me, I'm not listening. And, all my wives, Maye, other people have always, through my life, said, I don't listen when they're talking. And then I said, well, I don't remember you talking to me. And then I realized I've also got that a little bit. And so I think sometimes a person goes into a sort of deeper, you start thinking sort of more intensely about something, and you shut out the world because it's a very important thing you're trying to solve in your head. And obviously that helps, because if you are being constantly interrupted, then you will obviously not be able to come to an answer in your head, So yes, I would say you do. It's useful.
Yeah. I know it is. I mean, he spoke very openly about this in a TED talk. He sort of he talks about the struggles that he had with social cues, which you've mentioned as well. Obviously taking things literally sometimes, but also he says it contributed to his passion for technology, including programming and physics. Because you look at that sort of side, and I think what's really powerful, as I said at the beginning of this conversation, is that other people watching this who are struggling with people who may have children themselves who are on the spectrum, as they call it, that there is a positive side. I mean, how did you cope as a parent, realizing that Elon was different in this way?
Well, as I said, he was different in the way that he saw things black and white, and the way he responded to adults who seemed to want him to be like, go and play with the children and stuff like that. I had to say to him, you can't behave like that. You can't do that. So, and then he would say, but why not? And so, so even to this day, I look at him coming on the stage with Trump and so on. He'll get better, as we all do, as time goes by, and become more sort of able to do it. But in many ways, I see him almost watching himself on the stage. So he would go on the stage, he'd be up in the corner of the room, looking at himself and trying to make sure that he says, draw the right strings and says the right things. He, in terms of what I'm talking about, is engaging, so one might often think you're talking with him. People might think they're talking to him, but they get the feeling that he's not engaging, but he is probably engaging, but it appears he doesn't. So it has its disadvantages. I have had people, not once, many times, say to me that I think your son doesn't like me. And then I'd say, an adult or whoever, and then I'd say, no. And I'd call Elon and I'd say, so-and-so here thinks you don't like him. Oh, no, Elon would say, no, I like you. Or in a sort of stupid way as well, and don't worry, I like you. And then clumsily, try and make up for it. But it's more that he's focusing on other things, And even with me, I was with him recently, and we were talking, and suddenly I saw he's not listening to me. He's looking at his shoe, and he's in deep thought looking at his shoe. And then suddenly, while I was talking to him, it wasn't about terribly important stuff. He suddenly said, I got to go now, without even acknowledging that I'm busy saying something to him. He suddenly looked at me, said, I got to go now. And he stood up immediately and started walking off. So I said, well, aren't you going to say goodbye? And turned around, oh, sorry. And, then I gave him a hug and off he went. So, that's about what it boils down to,
Yeah, and I think it's greater understanding. I mean, they're saying with neurodiversity, there's about 1.5 million adults with ASD expected to enter the workforce. And I think people like Elon, where you can talk about things publicly and get a better understanding, because we've got greater understanding in society now and greater acceptance, don't we?
Yes, yes, we have. And well, I suppose they've always, people are not, we're not stupid in the past. They also had understanding. But of course, nowadays, people have, I mean, you take Turing, is probably one of the best examples of being tolerant of people who have tendencies to be, sort of homosexual, gay. I mean, he actually lost his life basically because of being, homosexual. So we lost one of the most biggest gifted people that were ever given to us because we weren't tolerant in those days. So he's one of the best examples of being able to say to people when some people have said to me in shock, oh, I think my son is gay. To be able to say to them, Alan Turing was gay, look, and then they, oh, right, wow, so that kind of thing. No, we are more accepting of that kind of thing today, thank heavens. Yeah. Yes.
And I think there's certainly more understanding. So people watching this, as I say, there are lots of people who do respond so positively to what you say on the Andrew Eborn show, and that's why it's a joy having you here. Tell me, what advice would you give for those who suspect they have a child who may have Asperger's or autism or on the spectrum? What advice would you give to people?
Yeah, well, I think people today, as you've just said, are more aware of this kind of thing. And I imagine the schools probably might be more aware of it. It's difficult for a teacher who's got 30, maybe 40 children in a class. She needs them all to be somewhat regimented and do what she tells them all at once, all at the same time. But and if you have one who's sort of out of sync, it's difficult, I suppose. But generally, the parents and so on are more aware of it now, and so it's. I would say, try and measure how much of it is actually just a child being obstreperous or how much is real, and if a child has a tendency to be deep in thought over things that they're doing, I would say allow it, tolerate it. I have a little boy of 7, once he gets into video games, he's Elon's half brother. You can stand around him, you can set off fireworks, you can flash the lights on and off, you can do anything you like. You ain't going to get through to him. He's just not going to respond. And so it's the same thing in a way,
No, great advice, and I think more understanding and recognize there is these sort of compensations. I say some of the most brilliant minds in history are sort of recognized to be on the spectrum somewhere. I want to go back to Saturday Night Live, as you say. There's sort of humor there has got a bit pointed. Elon's again in the press about this. There was an episode which aired on November the 9th following Donald Trump's election, and Elon has responded negatively to being mocked. Did you see that episode?
No.
Well, basically, it was an open mocking of Trump's win, with Dana Carvey basically mimicked Elon's enthusiasm with the MAGA hat and exaggerated gesture. And Elon basically expressed his dissatisfaction on Twitter, saying, no, it just wasn't funny. And I think this is your point, isn't it?
That's not funny at all. I mean, they're trying to make fun of people. I don't know what audience they're trying to reach. They're trying to reach a very stingy, mean-spirited audience that's out there, a very, deeply jealous, hateful element that they're trying to reach out there that are all going to say, hey, look at that. I mean, that's what they're trying to do. I mean, all they've done is made fools of themselves. I mean, this Alec Baldwin character has done this so much. And I mean, I don't know how he shows his face. He's probably one of the most disliked people on earth. And so, they try all this stuff thinking it's going to go down wonderfully, but it doesn't go down. It goes down like hook, line, and sinker, straight to the bottom, and people turn it off. The audience for Saturday Night Live is almost non-existent. I can honestly talk to my family overseas, or especially my daughters, who watch lots of TV, and might say to them, "Do you watch Saturday Night Live?" They say, "What's that?" What's that? And No, I wouldn't worry about Saturday Night Live at all. Not at all. Nobody watches it anymore. It's done.
Well, the other thing that came out was this claim by Chloe Feynman. It's now deleted the claim she put on TikTok, saying that basically Elon made her cry during his hosting of Saturday Night Live. What's your take on that?
Cry? I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, I don't take Saturday Night Live serious. I think they made Elon look silly in that show, and he was prepared to be made silly. So what the heck? But I wouldn't advise him to go back on Saturday Night Live at any time, because nobody watches it anymore. It's not important. They're much. I mean, if you want to see funny stuff, there are a lot of just ordinary political talk shows that are funnier. And so I'm watching this London Talk TV the other night a few times, and this James Whale, he's weird. He just chases people off his program, to go. Then they switch off the program. I don't want to talk to you. Go. It's very funny, and it's odd actually. People shouldn't be doing that, but yeah. So no, Saturday Night Live, boring.
Oh, James is great. I'm often on his show. I think you and we follow each other on these different platforms, which is quite fun. So I was on Talk last week as well. He's a great character. And basically what he was saying, Elon was very worried because he felt that the sketch wasn't funny. That was the point. And what Feynman was saying, she basically said that he was looking at her as though he's going to fire her from Tesla. Is how she felt. But I think that Elon was just a little bit worried about that he was going to be exposed in this way with a sketch that he didn't find funny.
No. I mean, everybody knows Saturday Night Live is not funny. So all he's saying is it's not even interesting what Elon said, because everybody knows that, But coming back to James Whale, I'm waiting they call me quite regularly to give my opinion on something. I'm waiting for James Whale to say to me that I'm a stupid idiot. I'm waiting because I'd like him to say that to me, because he'll get a surprise if he did that to me.
Well, you say that. I heard your brilliant idea. Whilst I was traveling, you contacted me about one of the interviews that you gave, and I heard that interview, and you held your own very well in the various formats that you've had with people. How's your experience been with the media over the last few days?
With the media?
What? Yes.
Well, I have a lot of people today at 2:00 Daily Mail of England wants to do the same interview. And then at 5:00, another one. It's hard to keep track of them all, And so it's really just been because since the election, or just leading up to the election and after the election. But so people are very interested to know what Elon proposes to do. Is he going to, sort of fire people who desperately need their jobs and all that sort of stuff? And I point out to them, no, that wouldn't be Elon's way. So if they find someone in a government post and the post is considered unnecessary, they would cease to have that post after that person has moved on, retired, or something like that. They wouldn't simply, I know Elon, they wouldn't simply put somebody, out of the job. I mean, they would find alternative employment, for that job, for that person. And so, no, that Elon and them are sensible. They're not going to do any job cutting in a stupid way, I mean, they're very sensible. And fortunately, he has this other chap to help him. So, you can't run a proper business if you're known as some sort of dictator, rogue boss or something. Your people have to love you, if you're in a business, And my experience with Tesla and SpaceX and the various businesses Elon's been involved in, and Kimball, the people absolutely love him, love my sons, the employees, I mean, and speak of my sons so highly and all that sort of stuff, So that's what you really need. And they will do that with their new job, with this new post that he's in, for sure.
No. And it is fascinating, as you say, the sort of media, not just obviously the election, but since you've been on the Andrew Eborn show, people love the Andrew and Errol show. It's got to be good. What I love about it, though, is doing live television means people can't edit you, they can't represent you in a certain way. What has been your experience of the interviews you've had?
Well, I found that I was getting, prior to the election, calls from Times TV or something, where they would sort of put words in my mouth. You know, in other words, they make a sort of, they make some sort of point on the start of the interview that it seemed as though it was coming from me, where I was supposed to say yes or no, and then if I said yes or no, it was amounted to the same thing. In other words, what if I said yes, it was their point was taken, or if I said no, their point was taken. And I stopped that. I immediately said, hey, stop. You're not doing this. You can't do this. And this woman, somebody or other, I mean, she wouldn't stop. She kept on and on. And eventually I said to her, look, you're not putting words in my mouth, lady. You better stop what you're doing, you see? And she just went on, and eventually she put she's terminated the interview. She said, I'm terminating this interview. And then I had to get hold of them and say, look, this is not right what you've done here with this woman, And then they did actually broadcast it. So it's possible to see this interview, but they took out her way of, they made it more easy to watch and more reasonable. And then I've also had, which is okay. And then I had the BBC where it was also a television interview, and they never gave me a word. They simply carried on and on saying what they think I think. And this man and this woman, and I couldn't get a word in. And then finally, and putting out this extremely, I suppose you could say, anti-Trump, pro-Starmer point of view, and, they're entitled, I suppose, but they never gave me a chance to say anything. And then that was the end. And they said, thanks a lot and bye, and off they went. And then I had to get hold of the BBC and say to them, look, you can't do this kind of thing. What you've just done is completely unacceptable. And unfortunately, I don't know if it was live or not live. I'm not sure. I think it was live. So I'm wary of having an interview with the BBC,
Well, and it is interesting. I mean, I heard your fee Glover. That was the person at the Times Radio, and you and I spoke whilst I was in Japan. And I think and you were very worried they were going to portray you in the wrong way. In the end, I think it was fine. The program that I saw was edited. But in terms of people watching, you're now a seasoned contributor to many programs around the world. What advice would you give to people being interviewed?
Well, it's important to prepare, and I have people saying to me, before I go on, friends saying to me, you should say this or do this or write down. Unfortunately, interviews are quite good. It's like, you have these court cases. Say, take a court case where somebody's accused of something. And then everybody says, oh, he or she's done, he's done. And then the lawyers and or people with more knowledge will say to you, wait until it goes into court. Because once you go into court, and it's one-on-one, and the prosecutor or the defense attorney or lawyer is able to do questioning one-on-one with everybody listening, then you see really what comes out. And so it's much different to what people's hope and what the conjecture was beforehand, that this would be said or that would be said, because ultimately, under those circumstances, the human psyche battles to come across with the sort of narrative they'd like to come across with, and they get caught out. So again, with these sort of interviews, you're best off talking about what you know, and being as, don't try and put across anything you don't really know a lot about, and certainly, be aware that you're going to be called out if you say something that's wrong. That's blatantly wrong. And so you have to be aware of that, because they're going to say to you, that's not true what you just said. And you're going to be tongue-tied after that,
Well,
and so that's why
you've certainly never been tongue-tied in all of the time. We've had many, many hours talking together, which is always an absolute joy. Errol, a real pleasure. Thank you so much for coming back. As I say, the new Andrew and Errol show, the A&E. Look forward to our next trip there next time.
Okay. Thank you.